right? They want to know, they want answers. There never was a trial to get these answers. And now into this next part, I think that we have mentioned before on Headline Highlights a little bit about this, but it's been getting a lot more serious recently. But the lawsuits that the victims' families have now filed and who they're pointing the finger at does start to shed some light. Because at this point, this isn't just about Brian Cobberger anymore. This is about whether there were missed warning signs and whether the system around him failed in a way that ultimately had deadly consequences. The family of some of the victims have now filed a civil lawsuit against WSU, the school that Cobberger was attending as a criminology student for his PhD program at the time of the murders. And the core argument that they're making is that the university knew, or should have known, that Brian was exhibiting very troubling behavior, but that they didn't do enough about it. According to the lawsuit, there were complaints, concerns raised by faculty, reports made that Cobberger was making people uncomfortable, especially women, a lot of different things. So the families argue that these weren't isolated incidents and that there were plenty of opportunities to step in, and these opportunities were just missed. They're essentially saying that if concerns had been taken more seriously, escalated properly, or addressed earlier, that there's a chance that this tragedy could have been prevented. And that is a very heavy accusation, but one that many people agree with.
Washington State University, where convicted murderer Brian Cobberger attended college, is now facing litigation of its own from the families of the Idaho students who were brutally killed at the hands of Cobberger. The murder victims, 21-year-olds Kaylee Gonzalez and Madison Mogan, as well as 20-year-old Xana Kernodle and Ethan Chapin's families, are all suing Washington State for gross negligence and wrongful death in a lawsuit made public January 7th. In a complaint obtained by multiple outlets, the families accused WSU of violating Title IX, the federal law that prohibits sex-based discrimination at public universities, saying the school and faculty remained, quote, idle in the face of known extreme and repeated instances of discrimination, sexual harassment, and stalking by Cobberger occurring in its educational program. Adding that Cobberger, who was a PhD student and a teaching assistant in the school's Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology before the murders, had, quote, developed a reputation for discriminatory, harassing, and stalking behavior. The complaint also argues the school's alleged lack of action against the convicted killer, quote, ultimately culminated in Cobberger stalking and murdering the decedents.
The lawsuit also makes it a point to state that Brian Cobberger was studying criminology, literally learning about criminal behavior while allegedly displaying behavior that not only raised red flags, but could potentially be considered criminal itself. The families argue that this made the situation even more concerning, not less. Now, WSU has pushed back, saying they followed policy, that they couldn't have predicted what Cobberger would have done, what he wasn't going to do, and that the murders were not foreseeable based on the information that they had at the time. In other words, they're saying that this, yes, was a horrific crime, but not one that they could have prevented or one that they can be held responsible for. But still, the families are not backing down. And for them, this lawsuit isn't just about money. It's about accountability. It's about forcing major institutions to take complaints seriously, to act earlier, and to prevent something like this from ever happening again. And truthfully, when you zoom out of all of it, this lawsuit fits right into the bigger theme of this case. Unanswered questions, pieces that never fully came out in court, and a lot of people left wondering how somebody like this,